Hey everybody, good morning. Good morning from this side of the world, at least. Maybe it's good afternoon where you are, or even good evening, or good day in general if you're watching the replay for this live stream. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is Natalia Hansen, and I work with Humane Canada's Summit for Animals. The Summit for Animals, let me show you right here on the screen, is the biggest and boldest animal welfare conference in our country. And guess what? This year we are sold out. So normally I would be saying right now, register for the conference. There's still space. Join us in Montreal. But the messaging is changing because we are sold out now. So if you didn't get a chance to register for this year's conference in Montreal, please register for next year. And we will announce the location soon. Stay tuned for that announcement. But yeah, for this year, no more space. But for those who are coming, we are very excited and looking forward to seeing you in just a couple of weeks in beautiful Montreal. So we are doing this because we want to give viewers a sneak peek into the sessions and the type of speakers that you can find at the Summit for Animals. Today, I'm very excited because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because it relates to my job. So, we are going to talk to Lucas Solowey from Toronto Humane Society. He's an expert at public relations, media relations, communications, and I can't wait to pick his brain. So, by the way, if you're watching this live, please interact in the chat. Let us know if you have any questions, any pressing comments, anything that you want to know, because this again is a space for you, the viewers, to interact with some of our Summit for Animal speakers before we get together in Montreal. All right, before I bring out Lucas, let me tell you a little bit more about him. He's a skilled public relations professional with experience in nonprofits, ethical brands, and agencies. As I said before, he currently leads public relations for the Toronto Humane Society, and he's known for using PR, which is public relations, to foster connections and drive change. He has over a decade of experience and he's built relationships with diverse communities, change makers, celebrities, and politicians. His media relations and campaign expertise have delivered significant results, including press conferences and collaborations with figures like Pamela Anderson, Biff Naked, and Jan Arden, just to name a few. All right, let's bring out Lucas and say hello.
Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Great to see you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited to chat with you. I know some of the Toronto Humane folks may be watching as well. So, hello to you all, Toronto Humane Society followers. And as I said, Lucas, we're going to talk about media relations. We're going to talk about PR. So I really want to pick your brain. This is going to be the space for you to talk and give us a sneak peek because obviously we can't give too much away. We need to save the best for the conference where you are going to lead a workshop on this subject on the pre-conference learning labs on April 27th, which are sponsored by our friends at Edmonton Humane Society. And I want to start by asking you, why traditional media when we live in a digital age where everything seems to be on social, everything seems to be on Google? Why should we still care about the news, radio, TV, ads, etc.?
Well, that's a great question, Natalia. Traditional people still tune into traditional media. Millions and millions of people do. And on a weekly basis, Toronto Humane Society is on TV shows, on the radio, in print. We are getting out there and we're engaging with that media because it is still relevant. That being said, the best approach is in public relations. There's a model called the PESO model that stands for paid, earned, shared, owned. You want to ideally use all tools of communication. So, are you sponsoring a digital campaign? That might be a good idea. What, in terms of sharing, how are you getting the word out there through influencers and digital campaigns and social media? In terms of earned, which is what media relations is are you effectively pitching stories to reach the millions and millions of people that consume traditional media? And then owned, are you getting your story out there on your own media, such as your website, your blog, your newsletter, your e-blast? Are you being as effective with every approach? So I think it's the best approach is to use everything you can.
Okay. So basically, what you're saying is not just go with one or the other, but really use a combination of both.
Exactly. It is a changing media landscape. And I feel for my friends who work in mainstream media, it's a challenging industry, but they're doing incredible work. And that's why it's so important to support them when you can. So if you're pitching to the media, respect their time and how busy they are and make life easier for them. But it is a changing landscape. So I think it is important to know how to be able to work with influencers and social media and use those tools as well and be prepared for a changing future.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I want to highlight a comment here real quickly from Marta, who says, "Hi, my friends. I'm so glad, Marta, that you're watching live. Thank you." And again, if you're watching live, if you have any questions, any comments, any concerns related to media relations, public relations, communications, etc., please post them in the comments. We want to interact with you. Okay, so thanks for saying that. And I want you to share with everyone who's watching what you shared with me when we were backstage. How many impressions in traditional media has Toronto Humane Society had
Um,
recently?
so I don't know the exact numbers, but it is over a billion last year in terms of earned media impressions, over a billion. That's a lot of eyes, that's a lot of ears listening to the radio. And that is worth hundreds of millions of dollars in ad value. So we're not paying for ads, like we're not paying for that content, but it's worth that much in terms of value if an advertiser was paying for that space. So it's thousands and thousands of mentions. So we've really been working hard to get our stories out there, get animal stories out there, and get people engaged and supporting the work that we do.
Wow, that is incredible. And congrats to you. And honestly, I want to congratulate you and commend you publicly because I've seen the difference, the positive difference that you've made at Toronto Humane Society since you came into this role of public relations manager. Because I always see you, you're partnering with celebrities, with singers, you're in the news, you did something recently, or maybe it was a couple of months ago, something with, was it with TD Bank perhaps?
Yeah, so my colleague Greg, who handles our corporate relations, he has a partnership with TD for Toronto Humane Society, and they launched a dog ATM. And so we helped
Yes.
highlight that. We brought some of our adorable puppies that were available for adoption to test out this dog ATM. So it's a small sized ATM. It does not dispense money, it dispenses dog treats. And so as soon as a dog goes near it, it starts dispensing dog treats, which they enjoy. And it was fun to partner with them for that kind of experience.
Oh, amazing. I remember I saw that on social media and I thought, this is brilliant. This is fantastic. And I think this is a perfect example of how public relations really combines, like you said, corporate relations in this case. It's not just all about the media. I love that. Thank you so much. So I know that at the Summit for Animals, like as I said before, you're leading a workshop. It's called Mastering the Art of Media Pitches, How to Get Your Story Heard. So we all want that. We all like, there is so much competition. Social media is busy. We can go on any of our apps, on Instagram, on TikTok, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, you name it, and we can scroll never ending stories. And it's hard to really capture somebody's attention in this day and age. So I want you to please share a little bit and tell us, give us a sneak peek into what are some of those key elements that make a story newsworthy? Because there are many stories, but how can we make it stand out?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we really want to make sure, is the story newsworthy? A strong story isn't about just what you find interesting. It's about what will hook the media and their audience. So first we should ask ourselves, how does a story become newsworthy? And that's when it captures the attention of the public and media through a combination of key elements, which include timeliness, proximity, impact, conflict, human interest, novelty, prominence, and relevance. There's a lot of things to think through.
Yeah.
For example, you want to tie stories to these elements. So say you featured a local family reunited with their lost pet, that covers human interest, it covers impact, it covers proximity. Or say you want to launch a new program that's tied to a national trend that would cover timeliness, relevance, and novelty. And all of that will increase your chances of media picking up the story. And in the workshop, I'll be going much more into details on what makes a story newsworthy, what will most likely help your chances of getting media to pick it up.
Thank you. Yeah, because again, remember, this is just a sneak peek. So imagine if we're already learning all of this with this casual live stream conversation, imagine what attendees can actually learn. I have to say, I hope I get to attend your session because this is a subject that really interests me. It's just, it's always different when you're working at the conference and you're behind the scenes. I don't often get to sit in on the sessions, but I'm really hoping I can attend yours. Very much looking forward to it.
Thank you.
So, something else that I know you are going to touch on at this workshop, and I would love if you could speak a little bit on this, is the potential mistakes that we can make. Maybe because we don't really know how to do it, maybe because we're just starting, we're amateurs, maybe because we're over eager and we really want to get our stories out there in the media. So, can you please share some of these mistakes that are commonly made and how can we avoid them?
Sure. So one of the biggest mistakes is thinking a pitch is just an announcement. Journalists don't want promotions; they want real stories. And so you really want to think about what your goal is, what story you're trying to get out there, and what areas they're interested in, what they're covering. So, another mistake is sending a long, unfocused email that just gets ignored. You're going to really want to tailor your pitch to each type of media. So your pitch for TV will be different than your pitch to radio or print or online. You're also going to want to think about, what your goal is, what you want to accomplish. You should know in advance who your audience is, what media they're likely to consume, as well as which reporters cover which beats. So beats are also known as topics. So say you're a sports reporter or a music reporter or an economy, you're going to be focusing on those things. So you don't want to pitch the wrong topic to the wrong reporter. It's also a good idea to know what stories the reporter or outlet has been focusing on recently, because journalists are very busy these days and we don't want to waste their time by pitching stories that it's not related to them. So you really want to think these things through. What is your campaign? What message do you want to get out? Where does your audience pay attention to media? What all of those things you want to think of and do your research before. And I'll be in the workshop, I'll teach you how to be prepared for all of that and kind of have a work back plan. If you're putting out your press release on a certain date and you want to pitch the story and get it picked up, how far in advance do you pitch? What type of messaging do you use? What type of subject line? Is it worth picking up the phone or just sending an email? But yeah, I'd say right now the main mistake is just the topic not being newsworthy, being more promotional than an actual story.
Basically putting it out there and just like, okay, like there's a saying, throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks. So don't do that. Don't just send out a blast and hope for the best and hope that someone picks it up, basically.
Like you can, and sometimes it works. There's times where I've had to do that just because, something's happening now and you need to get the story out now and you don't have time to be as thorough. But the best approach is to be strategic. Think about what the story is, who's going to cover that story. So if you're doing a story on an athlete who adopted a dog, you might pitch that to sports media, but it wouldn't
Mhm.
make sense to send to the Globe and Mail economy journalist.
Right,
Like you have
right.
to think things through, and you ideally should put some time into building out your list, knowing who you want to contact, when you want to contact them, like think these things through and it'll be much more impactful.
Yeah. And the name public relations, we can't forget about that relations part because it is important to nurture those relationships with those journalists, with those reporters. For example, at Humane Canada, something that we've done is if we get approached by a journalist or a reporter, then we save their information and we say, okay, now we know so and so from this outlet reached out to us on this day to talk about this topic. So then in future, we can go back and say, hey, do you remember us? Now we want to talk about that again, or there's this other angle that maybe you're interested in covering. So there we already have a relationship. And I feel like that helps more than when you go up blankly and they don't know you, you don't know them. Something else, do you think it helps if you're pitching an outlet to have a little bit of background on them, like read their paper, listen to the radio show, and understand the kinds of subjects that they cover as opposed to just going blindly and hey, you know, cover
Yeah,
this story,
absolutely.
put it out there, right?
Yeah, it's all about doing your homework. Know who you're talking to, what stories they're interested in, what they've traditionally covered, and try and tailor your pitch to what is of interest to them. Um, yeah, I'd say that's the way to go, is just really know who you're speaking to. And sometimes in a pitch, I'll just be like, hey, so and so, I read your recent article on this. It was
Mm.
eye opening. Really enjoy the content you share. Speaking of content that you share, this might be a story of interest to your readers, to your listeners, to your viewers. And then share some bite sized information that will be of interest to them related to the topic that they just shared.
Yeah, and like you said, just do your homework. Like you said, you got to do it. I mean, Toronto Humane Society, I have to say, they're very lucky to have someone like you dedicated full time to this role because that's how you can really do your homework more thoroughly. If there are any other smaller organizations that maybe don't have that manpower, maybe grassroots or volunteer-run organizations, do you have any tips on how they can be more thorough in doing their homework when they don't have a dedicated person like you running their public relations and their media relations?
Yeah, so these are some things I'll definitely be sharing in the workshop just on how to be effective with the resources that you have to have the biggest impact and the biggest reach to share those
Awesome.
stories.
Now you heard, you gotta come. But again, if you registered already, because we are sold out, that's why you have to register early. So for anyone who's watching, whether live or watching the replay, when we open registration for the 2026 conference, not only will you want to register early to secure your spot, but also we usually almost always open the conference with amazing discounts, which only last about 2 weeks or so. So that's another reason to register early and secure your participation. Alrighty, so we talked about doing your homework, sending them a message, maybe adding some personalized notes. How do you follow up with them? Because of course, you send out a blast, you send out a press release, an announcement, etc., and you want every outlet to pick it up, but that's not always the case. So, how can we follow up with them in a way that's not overly persistent, that's also respectful of how busy reporters or journalists are, but at the same time it shows that, hey, I'm interested and I really would love for you to cover this story.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'd say following up is a bit of an art. You don't want to be too pushy, but you also don't want to let a great story die in an inbox. There's a fine
Exactly.
balance between knowing when and how to follow up, and it can make all the difference. So, pushing a story that doesn't seem to be getting picked up isn't the best approach. I would reflect and take the opportunity to maybe speak to a media contact you have a bit more of a relationship with, find out what stories they're focusing on in that news cycle, and see if you can pivot or edit your pitch to tie into what's most important to them or to what is on going on in the news cycle. So for example, if the news is focused on a global crisis or heavy content, there's two options you could probably do. One is you could reach out and say, hey, I know there's a lot of heavy content out there right now, but maybe your audience could use a feel good animal story just to lighten the mood a bit. Or say everyone's talking about the tariffs and politics. Maybe you want to pivot your story to how are tariffs impacting animals and the cost of pet food, for example. So that could be a story there. So you want to think you either edit your pitch or you repitch it, you repackage it as, I know times are heavy right now. Here's a feel good story that will resonate with your audience who loves animals. So there's so many different ways to go about it, but you don't want to just send your pitch and keep pushing it. If it's not getting picked up, it's for a reason. Either there it just isn't newsworthy enough to what stories are being shared at that time. So you can either, you know, repackage it, repitch it with slightly different elements, or you can hold on to it for another time if it's still relevant and repitch it at a later date, and then instead focus on what the media wants to talk about now.
Thank you. That's a great tip. And making it relevant, like you said, to whatever's going on in the world, because it's important to as well for us, media professionals, to know what's happening in the world so we don't come across as tone deaf, right? If there is a huge crisis happening right in our backyards or somewhere in the world and everybody's attention is to that, it seems a little bit disingenuous and a little bit disrespectful sometimes if we come across as like, hey, but okay, but we need to be sensitive too, right? About what's happening. And I think it's important as well, again, for us communications, marketing, PR professionals to really know what's happening outside of our bubble of our work because it really does end up affecting the work we do. So thank you. Those are great, great tips. So I wanted to ask you now, I'm sure you've got lots, but I would love it if you could share maybe an anecdote or a case study of how your efforts, yours and your teams at Toronto Humane Society, have helped advance your mission, have helped spotlight the animals that are under your care, the work that you're doing. I personally love hearing and learning from case studies and examples and anecdotes because I can always think like, oh, I could do that as well. So please share away.
Yeah. So we share so many different animal stories in different ways with the media. So one way is how we've helped animals through our PR and media work is to feature animals that are available for adoption in the media. So we've had different pet profiles. So tomorrow, for example, I'll be going on CP24 to bring an adoptable animal on and share their story, share their bio. That helps the chances of that animal get adopted. I've done that on CBC Kids for kid audiences. We've done that now on Breakfast Television, a new weekly pet segment. So that helps really feature that animal, have their story shared, and hopefully get them adopted. And then one other interesting example is, and this ties back to the last question. I was pitching and pitching, trying to get some stories out, and then the media was not responsive. And then I realized they were only covering Taylor Swift stories because that was when she was on her tour and she was coming to Toronto. So
Yeah.
I had to get pretty creative, think outside of the box. And I ended up getting my team to rename or name 17 cats after Taylor Swift because she's known as a cat lady.
Yes.
So we renamed a bunch of cats after her. And then we sent out an open letter to her and her team inviting her to come and visit the animals that are named after her, and that we'd be playing her music for the cats in our cat rooms. So it became a really fun story, and the media loved it. It got picked up and it reached tens of millions of people. And all 17 cats ended up getting adopted. So while Taylor did not take us up on the offer and visit us, it did still reach many millions, and it did was impactful in getting animals adopted. So sometimes you have to think outside of the box. You have to think about, what's happening in the news, and can you have some fun ideas to create that buzz and be impactful at the same time.
I love that, and I want to ask you more about that. But I want to highlight, sorry, a comment here from Jennifer. She's part of the Humane Canada team. Thanks, Jennifer, for watching. And she says here, I started my career as a reporter, and we had to always figure out several ways to tell a story, depending on who we wanted to reach. Good communications people need to be able to change the angle of their stories as well. Great point, Lucas. So just wanted to highlight that comment that Jen just made here. This is a fantastic case study, the Taylor Swift, because of course she came to Toronto, and I believe she did more than one show, right? It was
Yeah,
during her
I think like
recent.
8 days, 10 days, something like that.
Insane. So obviously you can see whether people like her or not, but you can see why everybody's focus is basically on that. Because when you're an artist of that caliber and you're doing 3, 5, 4, 10 shows, I mean, come on, that's gotta give people something to talk about. So I think this strategy is brilliant. What were some of the cats' names? Please tell us.
So they're everything from Midnight's, Champagne, um, also one named after her boyfriend, Kelsey or Kels. And there's Swifty, there was Red, there was so many.
That's brilliant. I have to say that that would be an amazing job. You know, if I had been working at Toronto Humane Society and you come to me and you say, Natalia, your job today is to rename these cats after Taylor Swift, I'm on it. You got it. I love that. That is so funny. I wonder if the families or the people who adopted these cats kept those names.
I would think so. A lot of people who came in for those cats were Swifties. They saw it in the news and they wanted kind of it's a longer lasting souvenir from the show. Like it's more than a t-shirt or a keychain. It's a relationship that you're building with, an animal named after all of that. And it's a fun story to tell. So I think a lot of people kept those names. And yeah, you know, got to bring a lovely animal home with them.
Yes, I love that. That's amazing. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that. There's a comment that just came through from LinkedIn from Dr. Azalea Boyd. She's also a speaker at the Summit for Animals. She's been involved in the program committee as well. And she says these are also great point for podcasters. She has a podcast herself in little sneak peek. She will be live streaming her podcast. She'll be live, not streaming, sorry, but recording some podcasts at the conference with some of our speakers. So I absolutely agree. These are also great points for podcasters. So the points that you've made, Lucas, and the conversations that we've had today, it really again applies to TV news, radio, podcasts, yeah, ads, I guess. It really is like across the board, I would say. And we're almost at the top of the hour. So I wanted to just ask you now from an attendee point of view, because yes, you're speaking, but obviously you're also coming for the 3 days of conference. You will also be standing from the other side of the stage as an attendee yourself. So are there any sessions or speakers or activities that you're looking forward to at the Summit for Animals in Montreal?
Oh, there's so many. I would say I'll most likely follow the marketing track just because it's most applicable to me. That being
Yeah.
said, my colleague Dylan Dodson, who's our social work director at Toronto Humane Society, she's offering a workshop. So if there is time, I'd love to see that as well. There's so many great speakers to choose from. So I'll be looking a little closer and start to narrow down the talks to see which ones I can attend. But yes, such a great lineup of speakers.
Honestly, yes, yes. We do have a fantastic lineup of speakers like Lucas himself. You just mentioned Dylan. We had a lovely chat with Dylan about a month or so ago because she's also speaking and she'll be representing the International Association of Veterinary Social Workers as well, which is a trending newer field in our sector. So it's really cool because it's been really neat to see the evolution of the Summit for Animals and how we keep the topics and the educational streams current to what's happening in animal welfare. I remember, for example, I think it was in 2017, we had one full track on cats, cat care, capacity for care for cats, trap neuter return, etc. And then this year, for example, we have 10 educational topics, one of them being marketing, which is where you're speaking. And even though we're sold out, I still invite people to browse through our conference schedule because you'll get an idea of the types of sessions, the educational topics, the types of speakers like Lucas that you can learn from at the Summit for Animals. And they also learn from other speakers. It's a win win situation. So, well, again, we're right at the top of the hour. Perfect timing. It's like we rehearsed this. Thank you so much for your time, Lucas. I really appreciate it. It's been very insightful. I look forward to seeing you and hearing your session at the Summit for Animals. Any parting words? I want to open the floor back up to you so you can close us off.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been great chatting with you. I would say, as much as this is most applicable to people working in the field who want to pitch stories, it can also be super applicable to just anyone who wants to be a stronger, more effective communicator in getting animal stories told. So whether you're speaking to a person or, the art of having an elevator pitch just when you're talking to people. So you don't necessarily have to be a media professional to attend this workshop. That it can be applicable to so many people, just in how to get your story out for animals and how to be more impactful and effective at getting that story told.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that important reminder. Thank you so much. And again, if you register, amazing, good job. We will see you in a few weeks in Montreal. If you didn't get a chance to register, don't worry, there's always 2026. Stay tuned because at the end of April, we will announce the dates and the location for the 2026 conference. Thank you again, Lucas. Thank you to everyone who watched live. And if you're watching the replay, thank you as well. We hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in a few weeks in Montreal. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye.